Sugidama blog. Sugidama blog.
Hey everyone, this is Alex. Welcome to the episode number 12 of Sugidama Podcast, the podcast about Japanese sake, the drink which has plenty of information in Japanese, but not that much in English. I'm recording this episode in the last days of 2020, and I'm going to take a break for a few weeks and resume the podcast sometime in January or probably in February. It's been 12 episodes, and I wonder how you found them. Which ones did you like the most, which you didn't like at all? Any suggestions, comments, reflections? Please send me an email and let me know what you think. It's alex@sugidama.co.uk. 2020 was a tough year for everyone. Many people lost their loved ones, got fired from their jobs, lost their businesses. We couldn't see our relatives and friends in person, couldn't travel when we wanted, and lost many other perks of the modern life. But on the other hand, for many, this year was a year of self-reflection. Taking some break of hectic lifestyle and stress, we've got the opportunity to spend more time with our immediate family, our partners and children, think about future and start something new. Personally, I have managed to start this podcast I was thinking about for some time. So yeah, there's often a silver lining and I can't complain. I've been thinking for a while what to feature in the last episode of Sugidama podcast in 2020, and I decided to talk about 5 essential books about sake I would like to recommend if you have developed more than a casual interest for the drink. Why books? We're still facing weeks of lockdown and staying home, so you might want to spend some of the time saved from commuting and going out on reading. Secondly, it's a season of presents, so you can ask for a particular book as a present or give it to someone else or treat yourself with a nice read. But before I talk about the books, let me tell you about our sponsor, London Sake, a very cool online sake shop with an amazing choice of more than 100 sake from 25 breweries, which they deliver across the UK and hopefully Europe. You can use their excellent tasting notes and food pairing suggestions to decide what sake to buy. They also have curated sake tasting sets, putting together various sake categories from different regions and breweries, which is a great opportunity to try and decide what type of sake you like the most. And you can get a 10% discount if you use the magic word Sugidama, all caps, during checkout. London Sake, making sake simple. And don't forget, if you leave a review on Apple Podcasts, I will read it out. Reviews let other people find out about Sugidama podcast and start listening from episode 1. And frankly, more listeners I have, more motivated I feel to come up with new episodes. To leave a review on Apple Podcasts, you have to go to the Sugidama podcast main page in Apple Podcasts and scroll down. The reviews should be there. If you don't use Apple, then please share the podcast on your social media accounts to spread the word. Okay, there are plenty of books about wine or whiskey. You go to any bookshop and you can always find something. Unfortunately, there are actually not many English language books available about the beautiful drink of Japanese sake. Definitely more than 5, I've got 7, but still probably fewer than 15. But the 5 books I'm going to talk about are probably the must. You don't have to buy all of them. 1 or 2 should be fine, and you might add a couple more later if you would like to expand your knowledge about sake and other Japanese alcoholic drinks. It will depend on your interest, geekiness, and the size of your bookshelf. And I'm sure we will see more books published on the topic, but this list will be a good place to start. If I have to name the essential book about sake, it would be the Sake Handbook by John Gontner. Why I've chosen this book? For a few very simple reasons. First of all, the book gives you all essential information about sake you want to know without being too technical. What type of sake exists, how it's made, and how to drink it. Secondly, the sake book's format. It's small and easy to carry, so you can read it on a train or take with you to a sake shop, restaurant, or, when the situation permits, to Japan and consult it every time you have a question about sake. And the last, but not the least reason, it's written by John Gontner, the utmost non-Japanese authority on sake. John Gontner is known as the sake guy. So if you have a question about sake and you don't speak Japanese, then he's the guy to go to, literally or virtually. I first found out about John after watching a documentary called Kampai for the Sake of Sake. Highly recommend it, and if you want to find out how he's got into sake, find the movie and watch it. Besides John Gontner, it features Philip Harper, the first non-Japanese Toji, and Kosuke Kuji, president of Nanbu Bijin Sake Brewery. John lives between Japan and the States at the moment. He has a highly acclaimed sake professional course. He's a judge on sake section of International Wine Challenge competition and also a co-host of Sake on Air podcast. So, as I have said, John Gontner is the authority on sake in the English-speaking world. And I like his writing style too. It's very to the point and still fun to read. The book consists of 3 parts. In part 1, John is talking about how sake is made, what types of sake exist, sake parameters, how to taste sake. He talks about the people in the sake brewing world. It's about 70 pages of information, very concise, very good, very easy to digest. So basically, if you want to find out quickly what sake is, how it's made, and so on, read the book. In the part 2, John has recommendations of more than 100 sake with labels, tasting notes, and other information. Very interesting, I would say complete. It's very well written. It's concise again, but very to the point. Tasting notes are very good. So you can take the book, and if you see the sake you like and this sake is in the book, you can get all the information and decide if you want to buy it or if you want to try it or if you want to drink it. And in the part 3, there is a list of sake pubs and retailers in Japan and the US. This part is probably less relevant at the moment because the book was published in 2002. Probably a lot of places closed down. Probably there are plenty of new places opened, especially in the US. And if you don't live in US and you're not going to visit Japan soon, again, it's not probably very useful for you. But again, it's not a big part of the book. A brief glossary at the back of the book provides definitions for all the sake terms used. So if you want to buy only one book about sake, before, for example, traveling to Japan, or just to get the essential information about the drink, this is the one. The second book is also by John Gontner, and it's called Sake Confidential. You can consider it as a companion of the Sake Handbook. While the first book is more factual and informative, Sake Confidential is more personal and opinionated. The book gives you more meat in terms of the sake content. Its subtitle reads, "A Beyond the Basic Guide to Understanding, Tasting, Selection and Enjoyment of Sake." So it's not only explains sake terms and definitions, but also talks about it in more details and busts myths and misconceptions about them. The book also has a portable format. Sake Confidential has an introduction which in a way summarizes the Sake Handbook in just over 10 pages. So if the reader doesn't know anything about sake, it will give the key points. The book also has 3 main parts. So if we look at the first part of the book, it's called Sake Secrets. And each chapter in this part starts with the truth about. And it's basically truth about junmai versus non-junmai, for example, or the truth about aged sake, or truth about ginjo, and so on. It's plenty of stuff there. And the second part is called How the Industry Really Works. And it's not like a business guide or something like that. It's not a business book. It talks about how the sake industry works from the point of consumer. You understand how sake is priced, how much effort they put into making sake. So it's very interesting. It's about also like about glassware, it's about outsourcing, milling, distribution, and things like that. The last part is called The Brewer's Art Revealed. It's about koji making, toji, and while all brewers make all grades. It's also very interesting and very informative. So it gives you this kind of very good understanding of what sake is and what it's not, in a very balanced and easy way, easy to understand, easy to digest. The book also provides sake recommendations in each chapter, so both books are great and were the first books about sake I bought. I enjoyed reading them and used them quite heavily at the beginning of my sake journey to check things I didn't know or couldn't remember. So basically, these two books are the essential books about sake. Again, they're portable, easy to read, and it's got plenty of information. The third book I would like to recommend, I've been actually a bit hesitant to feature it for one simple reason. It's out of print, and while you still can find it on Amazon or other online book retailers of used books, it could cost quite a lot. But I love this book. I think it's beautiful. I have a hope that it will be republished at some point. So the book I would like to recommend is The Book of Sake by Philip Harper, with a subtitle, A Connoisseur's Guide. Philip Harper is another legend in the world of sake, the first non-Japanese toji, a master brewer. He was also featured in this documentary, Kampai for the Sake of Sake, I mentioned before, and his story is a bit similar to John's. He came to Japan, I think on a JET program to teach English at school for a short time, fell in love with sake and Japan, and just stayed. I actually met Philip last year as he's British and comes to the UK in summer when the sake brewing season is over, and he usually does a few events presenting his sake. So he told us a very interesting story of how he first came to the brewery, and the owner didn't think he would last for long, but he ended up working for years at one brewery and then moving to another one as a toji. If you know Tamagawa brand of sake, it's a sake made by Philip Harper, so you can always try it because it's available in many countries, and it's beautiful sake. So why I chose this book? First of all, it's written by Philip Harper, who is a toji and also non-Japanese, which gives a very interesting perspective to the book. He knows like no one else how sake is made, and he understands how people outside Japan think, at least in Europe and North America. So he introduces sake from this angle, which is very insightful and very easy to understand. Secondly, the Book of Sake is beautifully made. It's a large hardback, but not very thick, with a wraparound, beautiful photos, and very well structured content. It was published by a subsidiary of a Japanese publishing house, Kodansha International, which has been unfortunately closed down since then, though the parent company and the US subsidiary still exist. That's why I've got some hope that the book will be republished. And thirdly, the book is focused on how to enjoy sake, thus the second title, A Connoisseur's Guide. And it talks not only about various types of sake, but also about food pairing, temperatures, regions, and so on. Plus, it has plenty of recommendations of specific sake and what is the best way to enjoy them. The structure, as I said, is very well done. So it starts with a part called Making Most of Sake, about how to drink sake, how to enjoy it. Then it talks about seasonality, types of sake and styles. then about breweries and regions, and then about how sake is made, about the brewer's craft. So I like this flow of the book of sake, starting from the main thing, how to enjoy sake, and going through the classification, regionality, and breweries, and finishing with a more technical focus. So if you can find this book, definitely consider buying it. It's an amazing book. You probably have to pour yourself a glass of sake while reading it. Again, to remind you guys about London Sake, our sponsor, and their cool curated sake tasting sets. For example, a Daiginjo sake tasting set, which includes 3 small bottles of Junmai Daiginjo sake, Shiraka Begura Junmai Daiginjo, Dasai 45, and Kubota Junmai Daiginjo. 3 excellent sake, but with slightly different personalities. So you can see for yourself that Junmai Daiginjo sake tastes differently depending on the brewery and style. It's what Natsuki was talking about like vertical sake tasting. So have a look. Don't forget about the magic word Sugidama, all caps, to get your 10% discount. So the books I have just mentioned, 3 of them, were published a while ago and since then become classic. Let's now talk about 2 books which have been published quite recently. One in 2019 and another one in 2020. And I will start with the most recent one, The Japanese Sake Bible by Brian Ashcraft. I have to confess that I haven't heard about Brian before the Sake Bible was out. Since then, I've been following him on Twitter, which is a lot of fun. He's a very interesting guy. So Brian has been living in Japan for almost 20 years, and he's a senior writer for a website about video games called Kotaku. He's also a columnist for the Japan Times and previously was a contributing editor at Wired magazine. Brian is the author of several books, including Japanese Whiskey, Japanese Tattoos, and Japanese Schoolgirl Confidential. No idea what this book is about. So Brian is not a sake guy, unlike John or Philip. He's more like a sake enthusiast, like myself, but a better writer. There are a few of his interviews available online, and the guys from Sake Revolution podcast also spoke to him in one of the recent episodes, and it's quite interesting. He talks about how he's pitched the idea of the book about sake to the publisher, and about his interest, about his story. So listen to the podcast, but I also want to bring him to this podcast in the next season. So let's see how it goes. Why I choose this book? First of all, it's a completely new book about sake, which is super exciting. As I have mentioned before, there are not that many books about sake, so any addition is highly welcome. Secondly, it's a really comprehensive book, providing a lot of historical and cultural context. It's beautifully published by Tuttle Publishing, with great photos, tasting notes, scores, and so on. But above all, it's amazingly well written, and you can lose yourself in it for hours. The Japanese Sake Bible consists of 6 chapters, covering topics from what sake is and isn't, and how it's made, ingredients, how to order and enjoy sake, sake history, and sake outside Japan. He's talking about like sake in the States, for example. There is an excellent buyer's guide at the end of the book with concise but very informative notes about 100 of different sake with scores, tasting notes, recommended temperatures, food pairing, and so on. Very good. But again, it's a real joy to read the book as it's written in a very entertaining way. The last on my list of the 5 essential sake books is the Complete Guide to Japanese Drinks by Stephen Lyman and Chris Bunting. This book gives you a very good perspective of sake in the modern Japanese drinking culture. The history of this book is quite interesting. The first edition of the book, called Drinking Japan, was written by Chris Bunting, a British author, alone, and published in 2011. It was more like a guide to Japanese best bars and pubs, with overviews of various Japanese alcoholic beverages. Then comes Stephen Lyman an American who fell in love with shochu, another Japanese national beverage. So together, they redesigned the book and made it more about drinks than bars. Steven Lyman is a very cool guy. I've listened to his interview on Sake on Air, and he was talking about how the complete guide to Japanese drinks was born. I also follow him on Twitter and on Discord, where he often organizes virtual drinks on Saturdays. The complete guide to Japanese drinks is also published by Turtle Publishing, and they did a great job. It's a big hardback with a lot of very good photos, and it's really very easy to read. Part 1 of the book talks about native alcohol tradition in Japan, starting with sake, then going to shochu, aramori, another distilled alcohol beverage from Okinawa, and finishing with umeshu, which is often called plum wine, which is not particularly correct. Part 2 of the book is about Western beverages in Japan, Japanese whiskey, beer, wine, and of course cocktails. The complete guide is very well written and gives you tons of interesting information about drinking culture in Japan. It also has a bar guide and buyer's guide at the end. So it's the biggest and heaviest book out of the 5 I've mentioned. I haven't mentioned all the books about sake available in English. There is an excellent book by Anthony Rose called Sake and the Wines of Japan, for example, covering also Japanese wines, something people usually don't know about, or a massive book called Sake, the History, Stories and Craft of Japan's Artisan Breweries, which focuses primarily on breweries. There are other books I don't own, but thinking of buying, but the ones I have mentioned in this episode are, in my opinion, essential. So you can now choose between 5 books to learn more about sake. I will put links to Amazon UK in the show notes, but you can probably buy them from other bookshops, mostly online, and read it sipping some nice sake you can order from our sponsor, London Sake. And don't forget to mention Sugidama, all caps, at checkout to get your 10% discount. So the last part for today is the sake of the episode, and this time I decided to do it slightly different. I decided to buy sake I haven't bought before and open it while recording this podcast, try it and tell you what I think about it. I know that I will like this sake because it's, I think I tried it a couple of times at some tastings, but I've never bought it before. I've never drank it properly. So this time it's Kubota Senju, Ginjo sake. So the interesting thing about Kubota brand is it's made by Asahi Shuzo. And it's not the Asahi Shuzo, Asahi Brewing Company, which make Dasai. It's a different one. I think I have mentioned it before, this confusion. And it's not the Asahi Brewery, which makes beer. So it's a completely different brewery from Niigata Prefecture, famous for its a very, very particular style of sake, dry and clean. And the brewery has been around since 1830, but the brand Kubota started in 1985, and it used to be nickname of the brewery, Kubota, so they decided to adopt it as a brand. The reason why Asahi is so popular, it means rising sun, symbol of Japan. So a lot of breweries or businesses, they want to incorporate this symbol in their name or their branding. So Kubota Senju, as I said, is a Ginjo sake. Although I read somewhere that they said, oh, it's a Honjozo with a milling ratio of Ginjo. And probably it was marketed by the brewery this way. But now at the brewery's website, it says Ginjo. And it says Kubota's bestseller, perfect Ginjo for meals. So it's food-friendly sake, which is quite interesting. So a couple of words about the sake itself. So it's from Niigata, and it uses Gohyaku Mangoku rice. And the milling ratio for koji, for the rice used for starter, is 50%, and for main fermentation is 55%. So it's definitely Ginjo sake. Let's try it. So it's quite interesting because the aroma of sake, it's not your typical Ginjo aroma. You got like a ripe plums, some kind of lemony lemon or lemon pie, a bit of rice, a bit of minerality. It's definitely some minerality in the aroma. And you can smell that it's a dry sake. So the sake meter value is +5, which makes it pretty dry. Let me taste it. Yeah, I would say that it's definitely Niigata style sake. It's dry. It's not very. It's dry. It's clean, and it's very smooth, with a very nice aftertaste. And because it's dry and it's not very aromatic, it should be very good with food. It's definitely food sake. Definitely sake you will enjoy, which will complement food. It won't overshadow it. It gives it very nice kick and will play with umami in the food and umami in sake. So it's amazing sake. But again, it's not your typical Ginjo sake. It's drier and it's less aromatic. It's more food friendly, I would say. So I definitely recommend, if you want to buy sake to have with food and you want something dry, then Kubota Senju is definitely very good sake. That's it for today. As I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, I'm going to take a break from the podcast for the next few weeks. In the meantime, try different sake and let me know which one is your favorite at the moment. You can try Kubota. There is a Kubota tasting set at London Sake, or you can buy Kubota in many shops in London or online. If you have any questions or suggestions, please email me to alex@sugidama.co.uk or connect through social media. You can find me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, even LinkedIn. Search for Sugidama blog. I will answer the questions through the podcast or directly, depending on the question. If you don't want to miss the start of the new season, please subscribe to the podcast. All podcast players and platforms do have this option. If you use Apple Podcasts, please leave a review. It's the best way to show your support for my podcast and my efforts. Share the podcast on your social media with your friends, relatives, and anyone else who show interest in sake. Have a great time during the end of the year's holidays. I'm sure that next year will be much better than 2020, which was pretty lousy, if you ask me, and tough for many. And I wish you to do all the things you've missed this year in 2021. I also hope that sake events will resume in London at some point, so we might see each other in flesh. To those who celebrate Christmas, I wish Merry Christmas, and to everyone a Happy New Year. Keep safe. Thanks a lot for listening and supporting Sugidama podcast in 2020. See you next year. Kampai.
Sugidama blog. Sugidama blog.